In this episode, Patricia Wyman, a wildlife biologist, lands her dream job after only a few days in this position. She enters the enclosure by herself. She is immediately surrounded by a pack of captive wolves. Consequently, her fate is sealed. This is the horrifying account of Patricia Wyman's final moments before she was killed by a pack of wolves. Welcome to Wild Assault. Patricia Wyman, a 24-year-old, believed she had landed her dream position. In Canada's Ontario, she had submitted an application to work at Halliburton Forest and Nature Reserve. When she was hired, Dawn was welcomed to the team as the position was for a keeper of the North American gray wolves. She was overjoyed. Working with them was going to be thrilling for her because she had always been fascinated by the species. Millions of trees, more than 100 lakes, and 100,000 acres of land make up the Halliburton Forest. It provides the general public with an incredible ecotourism experience in a remote area of Canada. It is a forest that has been sustainably managed, and it contains a research facility and a center for education about wolves. In 1993, they construct a wolf center and release their first wolf pack. They have always made an effort to maintain the wolves' wildness and allow them to act in a semi-natural way. Visitors can only observe the wolves through the one-way glass. There is no human interaction with them. They only encounter people when it is time to eat. Patricia had recently graduated from the University of Guelph in Ontario with a bachelor's and master's degree in wildlife biology. Her supervisor cautioned her about the risks of working with wolves when she showed up for her induction. They had never interacted with people because they had spent their entire lives in captivity. The reserve wanted it to be that way. The wolves had free access to their 15-acre pen. The wolves would retreat when the caretaker brought them food. Like wolves in the wild, they were fearful and timid. They avoided interacting with people and had never caused the staff to be overly concerned. Patricia was given a brief overview of her daily tasks, which included public outreach, speaking engagements, and wolf pack care. She was shown where to feed the wolves while being led into the wolf enclosure. She was tasked with feeding them by herself the next day. Patricia entered the compound after unlocking the gate and was immediately overcome by apprehension. None of the wolves could be seen when she turned to look around. She moved deliberately to the area where she dumped the food. When she turned to leave after setting it down, the alpha male was watching her. Alarm bells began to ring because of the way he was standing. Patricia's neck hairs were standing on end. He was as timid as the others. He was sizing up this new employee. He was assessing her. His behavior was strange, and something about him made me uneasy. Patricia, when she got home that night, she told her fiancé about her day's activities and expressed her excitement for her new position as well as her ability to read the alpha male in the pack. Patricia had obviously been disturbed by this particular wolf, but she didn't express her worries to her boss. She might not have wanted to make a scene because she was new. Perhaps she was mistaken about him after all. Patricia was right. The staff at the center had never expressed concern about him before. There was something concerning about the wolf's behavior. He had changed his behavior. She had, too, thanks to her extensive knowledge of wolf behavior. On April 18, 1996, the following day, Patricia had noticed it. Patricia returned to the enclosure. She was there this time to provide food for the wolves. Only one feeding per 5 days was given to the wolves. In actuality, nobody is certain of the cause. On that particular day, Patricia entered the enclosure by herself, and nobody is certain of what happened next. Eric Klinghammer, chief investigator, reached the following conclusion, though. The wolf paddock gate was unlocked by Patricia. The wolves became aware of her presence as the metal framework clanged behind her. She wanted to see them in their enclosure for some reason, but they were too far away from the fence. Fallen trees were scattered throughout the paddock. They were lying all over the grass. They were crossed by Patricia as she looked for the wolf pack. She had barely progressed through the enclosure when she came across them. 5 tall adults were sprawled out in the grass. They had already turned to face Patricia. They had heard her earlier. She was already in their smell. When they observed Patricia coming, they perked their ears and stood up. Patricia didn't move. She wasn't sure if she should stand and face them or slowly back away. When a person enters their territory, they typically flee, according to what she had been told. Normally, they had hesitation. Not today, though. Patricia was frozen in place as she stood there. The wolves made forward progress. They began to circle her and encircle her. Patricia was in a bind. She had to be afraid. When she noticed them moving closer, she must have panicked. When the warning signs of an impending attack grew stronger, her adrenaline would have spiked. Her chest shook as her heart pounded. The wolves advanced once more. They fixed their gaze on the young woman. The dominant male came closer. Patricia took a step backward. She proceeded, tripped over a downed tree, and hit the ground. And that's all. The wolves only needed to make one trip before they pounced. Patricia was stumbling around on the ground when she suddenly felt one of the wolves weight on top of her. She was aware of her dire situation. This was it, she realized. She made frantic attempts to stand up, but the wolves joined them in a frenzied attack. She felt the tearing of skin and muscle as the pack bit her all over, wrapped their jaws around her arms and legs, and pulled her limbs in every direction. She made a valiant effort to lash out and fend them off. But there were far too many of them, weighing up to 80 kilograms or piece 175 each. They were powerful and strong. Bone can be crushed by their razor-sharp teeth, which are designed to capture and kill their prey. As Patricia lay there, she felt herself getting weaker. She made an effort to cover her head and neck. She was at the end of her strength. She was severely bleeding. Had passed away on that day. Her dream job had only been hers for 4 days. Her years of training had prepared her for a position like this, and it ended so tragically and brutally. To their horror and shock, the reserve's 2 employees discovered Patricia's body that afternoon. They contacted the Ontario Provincial Police right away, who arrived quickly, pulled their weapons, and entered the enclosure. Eric Klinghammer, the investigator, hypothesized that the wolves' preference for unfamiliar food was the reason they had not eaten Patricia. His observations of what transpired on that tragic day were based on more than 25 years of work with wolves and wolf studies. He was also well-versed in wolf behavior and canine attacks on humans, both in the wild and in captivity. That such a vibrant, young woman lost her life doing what she loved was tragic. We'll never understand why she went into the wolf pen on that particular day. Maybe she was just curious about what they were doing up close. However, there are always risks in areas where there are predators. And this time it resulted in her regrettable last ailment,